Hello and welcome to the Rotoworld Player News Fantasy Baseball Q&A. I'm Eric Samulski. He's James Schiano. We're here Monday noon again. All-Star break is over. We've started the second half. That's not technically the second half because we've played more than half the season, but it's like the final 40% or however the math works. But we're in it, James. We're here. We're grinding. These are the dog days of the fantasy baseball season.
Yeah, major dog days. We're even in the dog days of August yet, which are actually the dog days. This is like the real. This is the doldrum in the middle of it. But about 100 games in, you want to win the championship. This is it right now. Every decision is super magnified. Every single little thing you do is going to hold a lot more significance and importance. This is time to really make your moves. This is time to really focus up and lock yourself back in, because this is when things get really tough.
Yeah, and this is when people start to check out. I mean, you will see it if you're here joining us in the chat. Just the amount of people that are here are probably going to fluctuate. Fantasy football chatter is picking up on Twitter. I mean, we're starting to shift. The social the sports fandom consciousness is starting to shift a little bit. And so, I think this is really where you can gain some ground. We've got some good stuff coming out, both our normal articles, but you've got an article on stashes. And the idea for that, I think, is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's connected partially to the trade deadline and also just August call-ups and things like that. And that's a way just for people to get ahead of the competition per se.
Totally. And I also think that there's usually a lot of misconception, at least in my view, in terms of fantasy baseball stashes this time of year, where people are still rushing for Shane McClanahan and Shane Bieber, and I'm losing the last injury guy off the top of my head right now. Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, right, who just had a setback, where it's very uncomfortable sometimes to try and rely on those guys because you just do not know the nature of what that recovery has looked like, what that rehab has looked like, any setbacks that can and oftentimes will happen with players of that like. It's very hard to track an injury stash. So it's a much better process to try and find stashes that may be a little bit less obvious, a little more off the beaten path. Not so the ace with the big arm issue, but the guy like Spencer Argetti, who I feel like we talk about a lot, who just had a broken thumb and now he's been throwing high intensity for a full month. He's on a rehab assignment. Should be back to being like not a sexy option, top 40 pitcher, top 45 hopefully, but that's kind of where you can win in the margins this time of year.
Yeah, and I put this in the chat just because I did want to talk about this, but like that also goes to this idea of like, what do you do with somebody like Isaac Paredes is also a big question at this point in time. You have the stash of like, oh, this starting pitcher is injured and coming back in 4 weeks. I'm going to stash him now. But then you also, in leagues without an IL spot or in leagues where your IL is super crowded, have situations with hitters like Isaac Paredes or Max Muncy, where you're like, hey, this guy might be out 3 or 4 weeks. Am I holding them? Am I dropping them? That's kind of like the inverse of the stash question, but it is the same concept of like, is my team in a position where I can hold this person on my bench for weeks without gaining any value from them whatsoever and take the chance? And like, I guess I'm curious, what are you doing with Paredes? I mean, we don't have a timeline yet from the Astros. Not that the Astros timeline will be accurate in any way, shape, or form because it's the Houston Astros. But that hamstring injury looked bad. The comments after the game were that it was kind of a severe hamstring injury, all of which tells me like a month might be your minimum or your starting guess. So, like, can you hold a guy who's not coming back until, like, maybe September, maybe the last week of August?
No, he's basically an auto drop at this point because, like you said, 4 weeks is the best case scenario for an injury like that. And even with 4 weeks, then you get 6 weeks to end the year of Isaac Paredes, who's, like, the 9th best third baseman in fantasy baseball. It's like, what are you getting for compared to what you're holding? You're losing the opportunity to add a player that might even just, one, accumulate stats for you, or two, just get hot enough to make you not even – missed it. I know you wrote about Caleb Durbin yesterday in the waiver wire column. Caleb Durbin's a guy that he came up, looked not very good. He's a strange fit and format of a baseball player, being about 5'6" and 125 pounds soaking wet without very much power at a corner spot. But He's someone that is getting his barrel on the ball. He's now becoming like one of these guys in the same mold of not to the same degree, but the Arias and the Quan with the slow bat speed, the incredible squared up rate, while adding the stolen bases on top. It's just, you can't wait around for guys who are not elite players like Isaac Paredes at this time of year. It's very hard to make that make sense.
Yeah, it goes to the same thing. Like Alec Boehm is another one, like auto drop Alec Boehm. If you don't have the IL spot, like he's probably out 3 or 4 weeks. Alec Boehm is an accumulator, right? His whole value is I hit in the middle of the order for the Phillies and I'm going to be a 280 hitter. And that's going to allow me to score some runs and drive in RBIs, even though I'm like a 20 homer bat. And so you can't hold a guy like that. And that's kind of the inverse of what we were saying with James's stash column is like, you have to determine if the guys on your bench are worth holding. I will say, like, I'm holding Michael King in a lot of leagues, no IL spots, because I think the Michael King upside is high. Also, the Padres really downplayed that injury when it happened. I didn't think it was going to be this long. I made the mistake of holding Dylan Cruz when he first got hurt in a lot of places because I believed in the upside. But like, you would be holding Dylan Cruz for like 2.5 months at this point for a guy who didn't even produce when he was healthy. And so you really have to make that call. I know in some leagues, people moved on from Francisco Alvarez when he was dropped. He obviously went bonkers at AAA for the Mets. It's crazy when hitters with his kind of raw power are just told to pull the ball in the air, like what it does to their results. It's wild. And so Dad, who's here, as always, thank you, Dad. We also hope your week is smooth. He wants to know, in a one-catcher league, would you rather roster Adrian Del Castillo, who came up on Friday for the Diamondbacks and was the DH for 2 out of 3 games, or would you rather roster Francisco Alvarez in a 12-team Roto league, one catcher?
See, this is hitting me in a bad spot because Mets fan, make a lot of Mets content apart from the work I do here, and I love Francisco Alvarez. But I really like Adrian Del Castillo. Del Castillo, he really just hits my boxes in terms of what I want to see from a catcher. Fun. Every time he's come up, he's produced. He's been very productive in the upper minors. He's older than Francisco Alvarez, which I kind of put in his favor a little bit. And also, as Francisco Alvarez has had a really bad season, he's dealt with injuries again. The reason the Mets were willing to send him down, first of all, is because they have another catcher they trust very much in Luis Torrens. And Luis Torrens has proved himself as one of the best defensive catchers in all of baseball. And at this point, unless Alvarez totally flips his switch and becomes even a better version of the Francisco Alvarez we saw in 2023 when he had 25 home runs, a 21-year-old, which we still can't forget, he's not going to get the DH reps like Adrian Del Castillo will get sometimes, and you're getting a 50% share of the catcher position. So a lot of times with these catcher spots, I'm looking at plate appearances, and I might actually lean Del Castillo.
Well, but so I love that you said getting the DH reps sometimes, because I think it's important to note that Adrian Del Castillo came up on Friday. He did not catch a single game over the weekend, and that's with Gabriel Moreno hurt.
That's true.
So the Diamondbacks don't have their starting catcher. They called up Del Castillo, who was ostensibly a catcher, and did not give him one start behind the plate, but instead started Jose Herrera twice and James McCann once. So Del Castillo is not catching. He is not going to catch for this team, because if he's not catching when Moreno is out, he's not going to catch when Moreno comes back. And so you're looking at Adrian Del Castillo as a DH. And that's where I lean Francisco Alvarez, because right now the DH at bats are there for Adrian Del Castillo, but that's because Pavin Smith is hurt.
Yeah.
When Pavin Smith comes back, he will DH against righties unless the Diamondbacks trade Josh Naylor, and then Pavin Smith can play first, and then Adrian Del Castillo can DH. But are they also going to trade Eugenio Suarez? And that, so that there's so many moving pieces in the Diamondbacks lineup that I think Adrian Del Castillo can be their regular DH for the rest of the season, but I don't know that he can be. And so I guess maybe in the short term, as I'm saying this out loud, maybe I would add Del Castillo in the short term because he's going to play regularly until Pavin Smith comes back. And then maybe you're adjusting at that point in time. But I just don't know what the future, I don't know what 2 weeks from now looks like for Adrian Del Castillo.
I also wonder if that's like when the rubber meets the road situation. Like, do you still continue to start Herrera or McCann when Pavin Smith is back, and you want to still see if you want to still get Del Castillo's bat in the lineup? It is funny. I think that the guys, I think over the next 2 weeks, he gets more plate appearances than Francisco Alvarez, which is where I
Yeah,
lean.
I think.
And
Yeah.
Alvarez, the power was crazy at AAA, but the contact rate was also poor. I think they just told him swing as hard as you can and try to pull as many fly balls in the air as possible. The home run yesterday with the batter's eye in Syracuse. It was a shot, but it was like Spencer Jones levels of zoned contact, and it was a 30% strikeout rate still in AAA. So it was like, I don't know. It's such a weird subplot of this crazy couple of months of Mets baseball. Whatever happens with Francisco Alvarez soon in the near future, but I'm excited to watch it unfold at least.
Yeah, and then that kind of connects back to what Dellin is asking. Same thing, but in a one catcher points league, would you take Del Castillo this week? So just short term, over Victor Caratini, Tyler Stevenson, or Carson Kelly?
I still might lean Stevenson. I think I always come back to Tyler Stevenson with these questions. I just also watched him crush the Mets over the weekend. Hit a home run, had a couple nice fly balls, but yeah, Del Castillo. I guess that to me seems just close. Like close. I think I like them both over Caratini and Kelly, but Stevenson and Del Castillo, I'm not sure if you can go wrong there.
I do just want to point out Victor Caratini playing every day for the Astros while Yordan Alvarez is out.
Yeah.
In 13 games in July, Victor Caratini hitting .377 with 4 home runs, 17 RBIs, and a steal in 13 games.
That's good.
You're not going to find a hotter bat right now than Victor Caratini. So I like, if you're looking at just this week, I don't know, man.
It's almost a wealth of options there.
The Astros have a 7-game week, and the last 4 come against the Athletics pitching staff. Like, I think I'd roll with Caratini if you're just talking this week.
Athletics at home too. So in Houston, not in Sacramento. In Sacramento, that totally pushes that entire decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a couple good options there. I guess we like 3 of the 4. I think Carson Kelly probably is the one that.
Yes.
Okay, he was Victor Caratini before Victor Caratini.
Yeah. Kelly is on the fringe for me there, or the outside guy. Bet on It guy says, I have Blake Snell coming back soon and need the roster spot. Who to drop? Ryan Nelson, Mitch Keller, Argetti, or Seth Lugo in a 12-team categories league.
Wow.
Obviously you probably have at least another week to make this decision with Snell. He went 4 innings in a rehab start yesterday. I think they'll probably give him 1 more, was what I had read. Right now, I think Mitch Keller is the short end of the stick guy for me there, because his value is going to depend so much on if and where he gets traded. I would not be cutting Seth Lugo. I'd rather hold Spencer Argetti if I have the space, because I think his upside is better than Ryan Nelson and Mitch Keller. But if you don't have the space, that's another question.
I'll also just say, mapping out Ryan Nelson's next handful of starts, if he stays on a 5-day schedule with the Diamondbacks, you have at Pirates, at Tigers, home Padres, home Rockies. Those are 4 starts. Then after that, you go at Colorado, but then it's a home Cincinnati or Cleveland, depending on it. So you have about a month's worth of 3 weeks worth of mostly favorable matchups for Ryan Nelson. Just looking at that, that's not someone I'd want to drop given the circumstance.
Yeah. This is an interesting question, because the question is, Spencer Argetti worth picking up and dropping Joe Boyle, or is Boyle going into the rotation? Because the issue here is, as of right now, Boyle is not in the rotation. Now, the Rays are not in as good of a playoff spot as they were before. They're on the outside looking in, but close. But the Rays could very easily contend while also making trades. And in the blurbs for today for the Rotoworld Player news site, I went through Jeff Passan's article today. And Passan mentions Taj Bradley as a potential trade chip for the Rays, because has not really produced, but he's under team control through 2029. So he could get the Rays back a pretty interesting haul of, controllable prospects. And then the Rays could slide Joe Boyle right into the rotation and probably get better production than Taj Bradley has been giving them. Same thing with Zach Littell, who's a free agent at the end of the year. The Rays are an organization that likes to get something for guys rather than letting them walk in free agency. They could trade Zach Littell for bullpen help or a low-level minor leaguer and then just put Joe Boyle in the rotation. So it's like, yeah, Joe Boyle isn't in the rotation now, but we also know Spencer Argetti isn't coming back for like another 3 weeks. Could Joe Boyle be back in the rotation in 3 weeks? Like, it's entirely plausible, and you would at least be getting innings from Joe Boyle right now out of the bullpen. And so I don't know, man. Like, I might keep Joe Boyle rather than stashing Spencer Argetti.
Yeah, just keep the guy who actually is pitching. The Rays also called up Ian Seymour recently, who was pitching almost as well as Joe Boyle in the minor leagues, but with significantly less fanfare, who could then become the new Joe Boyle if they do make one of these moves
Right.
and Joe Boyle goes in rotation. So it's not like that Joe Boyle is super important to the roster construction right now as the quote unquote long man, the guy to kind of clean up the mess, like soak up the innings after the short starts. Ian Seymour is very ready to become Joe Boyle, and he's a much different look because he's a lefty and there's a very right-handed heavy rotation. So I do think that they could. I think it's actually an all right-handed rotation. Even Joe Boyle, 6 right-handed pitchers with Seymour being the lefty. So he could instantly step into the Joe Boyle role if they do wind up getting off of Littell or Bradley. And getting off of Littell as they're fighting for a playoff spot is so raised to me because that's like someone who's reliable innings that could get
Yes.
so much more in a trade than they're probably actually worth. But just because of where the pitching market is right now, he's a beautiful trade chip.
I really like, I've been talking about this for long enough that I've talked myself into the belief it's going to happen. I just think the Rays are going to trade Zach Littell and move Joe Boyle into the rotation. I don't, it makes too much sense for the Rays, but also for roster construction that I just believe it's going to be a thing. Dad says in the same format. So this is 12-team roto, Bryson Stott or Ha-Seong Kim. I got to tell you, man, I was so into Bryson Stott coming into this year. I didn't love the plate discipline when he first came up, but it seemed like it was something that he could make work because he swung so much. So even though he made contact on so much that it was like, okay, this guy could still hit 250 or 260, 15 homers, 30 steals while making poor swing decisions. But it's so stagnant right now. The exit velocities aren't really great. The pull rate is really low. It's the lowest of his career. If I'm looking at the swinging strike rate right now, like it's still, he makes so much contact, but like maybe he is just a 240 hitter with decent speed. And Ha-Seong Kim also has really decent speed and he's playing every day. And I think he's better than a 240 hitter. I think maybe he's a 260 hitter. I don't know. I guess I would lean Bryson Stott because I think these guys are both like speed only plays right now, and Stott is in a much better lineup. But it's closer than I want it to be.
It is. The Phillies have played 11 left-handed pitchers since the beginning of June, and Bryson Stott has only started against 3 of them. It's just he's in the spot right now, and this has been a trend all season where he has not played against lefties. Like he's now officially a strong side platoon bat in that lineup with Edmundo Sosa. And I know that Kim hasn't hit yet, but we're only 2 years removed from Ha-Seong Kim being a top 100 pick in 5x5 drafts after that big season he had with the Padres. I think there's more power, but definitely more power and as much speed, if not even a hair more of that, because I think the Rays just run more than the Phillies do. And the Phillies lineup right now is very feast or famine with the top versus the bottom. It's that classic meme of like drawing a horse where the beginning of the horse is the stick figure and the back of it is like this beautifully well shaded steed. It's gotten around Twitter forever. Because that forever. That lineup falls apart fast. It's Turner, Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos, Realmuto, Ado Kemp, like Brandon Marsh, like Johan Rojas. It's just like they're not. Oh, and then there was that moment where Stott was hitting leadoff, and that was nice. But then you lose that, and it's like where you have a bottom of the order hitter after on a lineup that falls apart quickly. Like, are you scoring runs when behind you in the lineup is Max Kepler, Brandon Marsh, and Johan Rojas? Not many. Like, that is a good time to steal a base, but I think Kim offers you more in terms of the counting stats and the playing time at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with you. DJ Storm Florida just points out Del Castillo is a terrible catcher and can't handle a
Yeah,
pitching
he's
staff.
bad.
We agree, but that's why
Totally.
he's DHing full time right now, and not
Which is
catching.
better for fantasy.
Exactly. Is Lennon Sosa just some guy or worthy of a pickup? I think worthy of a pickup. I mean, I wrote about him the last 2 weeks in the waiver wire column. The contact metrics are really good. His process plus score on a pitcher list, which highlights decision value, contact value, power value, and tries to give a scope of like what is a hitter's process. Are they making good swing decisions and a lot of valuable contact on those swing decisions? Lennon Sosa's is above average since like the start of June, better than league average. In most leagues, he is at least triple position eligible. So I do like Lennon Sosa. I just think it's probably more of a deeper league play because the lineup around him is bad. And so even if he hits 270, which I think is feasible, like, is he scoring many runs? Is he driving in many runs? I don't really think so, but I've added him in a few places recently.
It's also, this is like the annual scheduled Lenny Sosa hot streak, because we're going to have, again, soon after the Lenny Sosa regularly scheduled cold streak, because it's such a free swinger. And I do think a lot of times in the both process plus by pitcher list and Seeger by Robert Lord Baseball Prospectus, that the free swingers always grade relatively well in those stats because there's a high rate of swinging at the good pitches to hit. But I think swinging at good pitches to hit in real life baseball, because you swing at that good pitch to hit, you don't exactly know the outcome of it. When you swing at a bad pitch to hit, you kind of do know the outcome of it. So I do think that there's some disconnect in the weighting of those. And again, not that those stats are bad, but because Lenny Sosa swinging at pitches in the heart of the zone is something that a lot of hitters fail to do sometimes. So a guy like Sosa that does that in spades is nice, but when you have one of the worst chase rates in the league and you draw one walk out of every 50 plate appearances, you will get ice cold at some point.
Yes, that's fair. Uncle Ted says Nathan Lukes in 15s is a must add. Listen, Nathan Lukes has been really good since moving to the leadoff spot for the Blue Jays. And so in a 15-team league, yeah, for sure. Just remember that he won't play against lefties. And so, like, against the Yankees, they're going to face both Rodon and Fried. So you can't play Nathan Lukes the first half of this week. And the question is going to be what happens when Dalton Varsho comes back, which could be as soon as next week. It's most likely that Varsho plays center and Nathan Lukes just moves to left field and Joey Loperfido goes to the bench. But is Lukes still going to be the leadoff hitter? Is he going to play every day against righties? Are he and Loperfido going to split time against righties? So that's certainly something to keep an eye on with Nathan Lukes. It is a good ad. It's a pretty low upside ad because he's basically batting average and runs scored. And so if he moves down in the batting order when Varsho comes back, it's basically just batting average against right-handed pitchers only.
Yeah, so that's the thing to look for with Lukes if he continues to hit leadoff. I do think he might. I think that as a leadoff hitter, I think he profiles a little bit better there than Dalton Varsho. Like, I'm sure that he's going to have a higher on base percentage than Dalton Varsho.
It would be more. The question would be more when Varsho comes back, do they move Springer back to the leadoff spot where they had him previously, or keep Lukes there? I think it's certainly possible that Lukes remains the leadoff hitter even when Varsho's back. But again,
if it found something with him there, because it was Bichette leading off most of the season. Now Bichette moving back to 4, I think that's freed up at the worst case scenario his mind to hit in the more way that he likes. Because I don't think Bo Bichette's a big pitch taker anyway. So I think that is they're what they're trying to do. I think is coax something out of Bo. So I think that Luke's just being up there and like taking a tough at bat to start the game, I think it helps their whole flow.
First of all, he is. I don't know if you mean Barger light, but he is not at all like Addison Barger.
It's like Clement heavy.
Barger has tremendous raw power and gets his OPS from slugging, and Nathan Lukes is all about drawing walks and getting on base. My Nathan Lukes concern is that Joey Loperfido is starting in left field right now with Varsho out. Joey Loperfido is hitting 348 in July. Joey Loperfido also has tons of power. He's gotten his strikeout rate in control recently. We know when Varsho comes back, he's going to be their everyday center fielder. So the question is, if they're finally getting something interesting out of Loperfido, who's only 26 years old and flashed in the minors for the Astros, when Varsho is back, are they really going to just like straight up bench Loperfido every day? Or is it going to be Loperfido and Luke's mixing in left field? And to me, that makes the most sense while they're both hitting well than just telling one of those guys he's glued to the pine. And so Luke's is fine for now. I just have some concerns in the future about how much he's continuing to play.
And the future is going to be in a week.
Right, a week.
Yeah.
Bet on It guy says, somebody dropped Evan Carter. Would you drop either Carrie Carpenter or Giancarlo Stanton for him or keep those players? What do you think?
I think I'm leaning for the Giancarlo Stanton drop. I'm pulling up the Yankees' recent playing time trends, but I do think that Yankee DH glut, they've all somewhat cannibalized each other. And I do think that it makes them it makes them all very difficult to be guys in weekly leagues, because Giancarlo usually plays like a 4 games on, 1 game off, 3 games on, 1 game off. Like that's kind of the rotation with him. And he's not hitting. This is not 2013 Giancarlo Stanton. So it's hard to justify a Giancarlo Stanton that's playing not every single day. That's also just been like definitely still hitting, but I don't know how much he can. I don't know how much Giancarlo Stanton's utility only player hits to justify the not everyday playing time.
Yeah, I think this also depends on what your lineup is like right now, because I'm looking for any update on Carrie Carpenter, who's been on the IL since the end of June with a hamstring strain, and I have not seen anything about him starting to run or like what his return date is going to be. So if you are in need of production right now, I could see, oh, there we go. So 2 days ago, Carrie Carpenter ran in Detroit, but AJ Hint said he is unlikely to start a rehab assignment this weekend and could go out next week. So Carrie Carpenter could start a rehab assignment this week. So you're maybe 2 weeks away from Carrie Carpenter coming back, roughly. And so I would probably drop Stanton and add Evan Carter, but maybe you're in a situation where you can't hold on to Carrie Carpenter on your bench getting nothing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, this is the reverse of the how we started the show, talking about dealing with these players who are not elite players, who are not producing for you right now, where that inflection point is about how worth it are to keep on your roster. Because Carrie Carpenter wasn't even hitting. He was starting to turn it on a little bit when he got hurt, but he wasn't the last year elite per at bat version of Carrie Carpenter. And he's probably not playing that different amount of time from Giancarlo Stanton, because while Stanton sits once or twice a week, Carpenter does too, just against the left-handed pitchers. So it's, I definitely want Evan Carter, but I'm dropping one of those two, but it's a real toss-up as to who it is.
Yeah. Same Bet on It guy also asked, David Robertson, the new closer for Philly now, ? They paid him closer money. Is he worth an ad?
I can't see it.
He's 100% worth an ad in my mind. You don't sign somebody to a 1-year, $16 million deal if you're not going to pitch them in high leverage innings. I don't know that he's the closer. I think they're still going to throw Matt Strom. They're still going to throw Orion Kerkering. Jose Alvarado, I believe, comes back the middle of August, I think, is when his suspension is
he's back.
over.
Yeah, that was middle of May.
Obviously, he's not playoff eligible, but it will muddy these waters. But my thing is, like, Orion Kerkering has been fine, but isn't really missing bats the way he used to. David Robertson was actually really good for Texas last year. It would not surprise me if we see Robertson and Matt Strom kind of picking up a lot of the save opportunities for the Phillies, with Kerkering mixing in as well. So I think, depending on your league type, I think Robertson is worth an ad. In my home league, where I've just been crushed by closer injuries, I had picked up Jordan Hicks a few weeks ago thinking, okay, the Red Sox use Aroldis Chapman sometimes in the 8th inning when lefties are up, and so Hicks can get a handful of saves here and there. Like, if you have a guy like that on your roster, I would rather have David Robertson, because I think there's just a chance that David Robertson is in a actual committee in Philadelphia.
I also wonder if just the acquisition of David Robertson as another pitcher you can trust towards the back end, who can be platoon neutral with the cutter and the curveball. That just might free them up to finally use Strom as the closer for the 10 days until they acquire David Bednar, Emmanuel Clase at the trade deadline. But I do think that the Phillies are always been reluctant to put Strom in that role because he's kind of de facto becomes the first guy they go to because Orion Kerkering can't get a left-handed batter out. Tanner Banks a good reliever, but he's not in this level of reliever. Jordan Romano has been a disaster. They often just need Strom before the ninth inning, which doesn't allow him to be free for the ninth inning, which gives the other players the same opportunity. So I wonder if having Robertson, who also was reported, I think, by Passan, that in that bullpen session he threw and the Phillies decided to give him a $16 million prorated contract, he was sitting between 89 and 91. And I know that David Robertson's never been known for his velocity, but he was a 94, 95 guy last season. So I think that if that actually is the case, I know he still has to build up, of course. He was the option of Lehigh Valley to build himself up down there, but he will not be a high leverage guy if he can't get above 93 miles an hour. Like that's just not the case.
Yeah, I did not see that anywhere in terms of his velocity. So we'll have to take a look on that because the John Heyman thing was that he looked really good. But what does that mean?
It was Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated who reported that.
Interesting. Okay. So I guess listen, he's at AAA this week. And we're gonna see what the velocity is on the guns right away. And so we'll see. And again, it's like Pat Ragazzo saying word is that his velocity sat between.
Definitely.
So it's hard to know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Points league question for you, James. Dellin says, this week in a points league, who do you trust the most? Austin Hayes, Matt McClain, Adolis Garcia, or Roman Anthony? And he mentions the Phillies southpaws. Roman Anthony is going to play against those lefties, but it is worth noting that Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo are two of the three pitchers. And also, not for nothing, but the third pitcher he faces is just some guy named Zach Wheeler. So,
I'm so aboard the Roman Anthony train. Like nothing can take me off it. I don't really care if he's facing Bob Gibson, Cy Young this week. I'm playing him in the lineup over these guys. Like I don't know. I'm not very scared of Jesus Luzardo after watching what's happened with him the last month. Like he's going to miss bats, but he's also going to give up tanks. Like he's Roman Anthony right now in terms of a baseball player. I don't spot a flaw. Do you spot a flaw? Swing decisions, power, athleticism. He's 21 years old. I think that for the rest of the season, he might be one of the top 50 hitters in fantasy baseball. Like there's no, he could be a first round pick in fantasy baseball in 2 years' time. Like he's that good.
Which segues into this question. This Bet on It guy says, who do you feel would be a better keeper for next season? I don't know if Samson here is Simpson, like Chandler Simpson. That's how I read it. Addison Barger, Jordan Westberg, Roman Anthony. It's Roman Anthony.
And also great options, incredible options. I got to tell you,
a lot of really good options.
If you could squeeze out a different keeper and keep another one of these guys, because I think Westberg, Barger, and like Chandler Simpson doing what he's doing in the style that he's doing it is also incredibly impressive. Roman Anthony is perfect. There's nothing else to say about him.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Roman Anthony, obviously as a Red Sox fan, but also just in general. Dad says better keeper to stash. Samuel Basallo, Kevin McGonigal, or JJ Weatherholt. I assume, and Dad, you can chime in the comments if this is incorrect, but I assume if we're talking about a keeper to stash, we're just thinking like who will be more productive next year. I'm keeping them this year. Who's going to be more productive next year? I think it's Basallo. It would not surprise me if he is the starting first base / DH for the Orioles at the beginning of the 2026 season. And I think he's really good. I don't think he's a catcher. So I think we need to keep that in mind. I think the Orioles are also telling us they don't think he's a catcher because he's playing more first base at AAA than he is catching. But I think Basallo will have catcher eligibility most likely next year in leagues and be catcher first base and play first base and DH almost every day. And
cheat code. I think that McGonigal and Weatherholt, you're likely still they're not going to be opening day guys next year. I think of hitters in the minor leagues, McGonigal's ceiling is probably one of the more underrated ones just because of what he does, contact, power, plate discipline, but he just got to AA. He's dealt with a lot of injuries this season. If you see him before next July, I'd be shocked. Where Weatherholt seems ready to play for the Cardinals, but does not have a spot because he's going to be a shortstop, third baseman. Mason Wynn is not leaving shortstop there. Nolan Arenado does have another year under contract. And the Cardinals have too many second basemen as is. So I think that Basayo certainly, I think almost 100% gets the most plate appearances from this trio next year. And likely is the best offensive ceiling anyway.
Yeah. Joe says, any preference between Colton Cowser and Ramon Laureano mixed roto? Where do you land?
The head says Cowser, but the heart might say Liriano right now. I don't know what Liriano's doing and how he's doing it, but a lot of things under the hood look better than what Cowser's done. And I'm certain that Ramon Laureano is going to find himself on a contender sometime in the next 2 weeks, and that's a player who's going to be playing with passion and heart for these next couple of months.
My question is, does he play regularly on a contender?
That's the problem. That's the thing. It was very hard to know. We know that Cowser is getting, which that's why it was the head versus heart. I think the head definitely telling me Cowser, but I think you might get some kind of bigger pop with Laureano just because of what the next couple of months could foretell.
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously power speed, Cowser is your guy. I mean, he is going to provide more speed. He is going to hit for more homers. Their batting averages have gotten closer in the month of July. Laureano's cooled off a little bit, but Laureano has a more prime spot in the lineup. And so the counting stats are better. As James points out, like he could move to a contender. I think Cowser is your upside play because we've seen that when he gets hot, he could be like a 270, 280 hitter who's crushing homers and stealing bases. And Laureano is your safer floor play because he's just been pretty solid this year, and who knows where he goes. It's your appetite for risk, I guess.
Yeah, I think that the appetite for risk this time of year should probably be a little more risk averse.
Yeah, unless you're really trying to climb up the standings, and then you might need to.
Yeah, or the opposite. Yeah, just go nuts.
This is a tough one for you. Uncle Ted says rest of season: Nick Curts or Roman Anthony.
Oh damn, this is like. It's like choosing between my two very talented adult sons. I don't know, maybe I might like Curts. Curts is great, and the park is actually better. It's like one of the 3 parks is better to hit than Fenway Park. You got to find a way for both, I have to say. There has to be somewhere else to trim the fat because those are probably 2 top 50 hitters for the rest of the season. Like there's nothing stopping either of those guys right now from being like all-star caliber hitters from this point onward.
Yeah. Shrek Spear says, in a 12-team 8-keeper league, he traded Mookie Betts for Yuri Perez and Brendan Donovan. He lost Burns and Reagans. His aces have been Ranger Suarez and Chris Sanchez. Should I have buyer's remorse? Yuri could be my ace for the next 15 years. Well, I don't think Yuri Perez, I guess technically he'd be 37. So sure, he could still be pitching in 15 years. I think it depends a little bit. Mookie Betts in a keeper league, I think will still have value. I believe in Mookie Betts bouncing back next year. I do think a lot of Mookie Betts' struggles this year were spending the entire offseason focusing on shortstop and then having the illness and then all of this kind of stuff, the toe. But I don't think it's crazy because Yuri Perez is 22 years old and could very well be a top 10 pitcher in baseball next year. And so if that upside hits, and you traded Mookie Betts for, a top 10 pitcher in baseball who's going to be 23 years old next year, you're going to be super happy. There's just a lot of variance and question marks around Yuri Perez. And so I don't think you should have buyer's remorse. I think it's in a keeper league, probably at least close, fair, one way or another.
Definitely. It's always a difficult proposition. 1, in the keeper leagues, trade what we believe are elite hitters for elite pitchers because it's always so much riskier. And 2, trying to forecast anything on earth for 15 years. You should be keeping a 12 to 36 month time frame for these dynasty leagues. And then you move once you think there's something that's tangible and material to move past that time frame, that's when you do it. Like if you're right now planning for the 2037 fantasy baseball season, there's a lot of variables that could be in play to change what we think of Yuri Perez, Mookie Betts, and anyone else out there.
Tons. Another points league question for you, James. Dellin says, I'm feeling the Cantillo 2-step today.
Me too,
Baltimore at Kansas City. In a points format, would you ride that over a 1-start Grant Holmes against the Rangers, Brandon Walter against the Diamondbacks, or Yu Darvish against the Cardinals?
I believe that Walter's also starting on Tuesday with an off day on Monday. So I think there was actually a chance that he did get a sneaky 2-step in there. Oh, no, he's moved to Wednesday. All right. Shucks, next week. So, yeah, 2-start. That's it. points league, you want the two bites of the apple. Baltimore's not a great match, but also not a bad one at this point in time. You want to get to Kansas City for the weekend, but you tread water in that first start, and you hope you get a win in the second one with Cantillo. You want two bites of the apple.
Yeah. Let's see. What's next? Oh, Dad says, rate these IL stashes based on rest of season value. Shane Bieber, Aaron Nola, Christian Javier, Kyle Bradish, and Zach Eflin. How do you rank them?
Nola, Eflin, Javier, Bieber, Bradish. My inclination with Kyle Bradish is that while he is working back, we see more of a Jacob deGrom last year situation, where the Orioles just want to get him on the mound. They're not going to be playing for anything. I mean, they're still 9 games out. They're still third to last in the American League, unless they rattle off like 7 in a row this week before the trade deadline. They are most likely selling every single thing they possibly can. And with that being the case, I can't see them pushing Kyle Bradish. Similar goes for Shane Bieber. I think the Guardians want to see Shane Bieber this year, so they know they can go into next year with Shane Bieber. Where the other guys, the Astros have a motivation to bring Christian Javier back.
Mhm.
They want Christian Javier for the playoffs. They want to keep winning games. They have space and time in the American League while they are still fighting for a seed and to get away from the wild card round to bring Javier back and pitch him fully. And there's some space in the back of that rotation. It's been very turbulent behind Valdez and Brown anyway. So I think that I bump him over those guys strangely, but I think behind Nola and Eflin, who I expect just throw the most innings of this group.
Yeah, I think I might have Eflin first, only because he's quite literally going to be back this week and will probably pitch the rest of the season, and also as a free agent at the end of the year and could get traded. And so where does Zach Eflin end up? Is he pitching for the Mets? Is he pitching for the Cubs? Is he pitching, who knows where that goes, but that could be interesting. And so I agree with your logic on all of that, in that I have Eflin and then Nola and then Javier and then Bieber and Bradish.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
And Nola, he should be back soon, but who knows? Better Guy says, what do we do in Pitt to have them call up Bubba Chandler? Listen, it should have happened. If he clears 50 innings, he will lose his rookie eligibility. It's now at a point where if they called him up, he could start once a week for the remainder of the season and not get to 50 innings. And so he should be up. He should have probably been up in the White Sox series, because that should have been the nice soft landing spot to give your prospect. You and I have talked about this ad nauseum. I really could not care less about how many guys he has recently started walking at AAA. He was utterly dominant through the first 2 months of the season. He deserved to get called up. He didn't get called up. Whatever is going on now mentally or mechanically or whatever, I think is a direct result of a guy who probably deserved a spot in the rotation in spring training and then didn't get it, and is now just banging his head against the wall at AAA, trying to figure out anything he could do to get promoted. There is no benefit to him facing AAA pitchers, because we know that talent-wise, he should be facing major league hitters and learning how to get out major league hitters. And so it's 100% the Pirates just being cheap and not wanting to give him innings. But now we're at a point where they could call him up and let him pitch 5 innings a start, and he wouldn't lose rookie eligibility. And he just needs to be called up. But I don't know. I would say it's probably safer for them to call him up, that they'll call him up in August, because then they really don't have to worry about him hitting his innings limit. I don't know.
Yeah, this is just also at this point, like, you're either kind of pot committed and going down with the ship, or you've just ignored the whole time and you've kind of won on the edges there, because it's hard to read into this deeply, but it does feel like it's a mental thing for Bubba Chandler. It's also easy to forget that last year the Pirates did give him a taste of AAA at the end of the season, and he did dominate there through September. So it all made sense that he would have been up long before right now this season if the team was even remotely serious about trying to compete, which now we know that they actually never were. So that's the easy thing to forego. But it's definitely frustrating from the player's perspective, because you've done everything, and then now you have to kind of battle yourself rather than the players near the team, which is what the sport's supposed to be about.
Agreed. Perry says, morning, guys. It seems like Luke Keshell is coming back soon, worth a speculative add to the IL. I would just push back on soon a little bit. Dan Hayes, who's the reporter for the Twins for The Athletic, said that they were told by the Twins that this is going to be a, quote, lengthier rehab. Okay. Remember that he like totally broke his forearm and like shattered it. And so the Twins want to make sure that he's fully comfortable and confident before they call him back up. He played 3 games over the weekend. He's going to play some games. He's going to work in at second. He's going to DH. I would expect this to be at least 2 weeks, 2 more weeks in the minor leagues, if not maybe a 3rd week in the minor leagues, because I think the Twins are probably going to sell at the deadline. It seems like Willie Castro could be gone. It seems like Harrison Bader could be gone. Willie Castro leaving would open up more playing time for Luke Keshell. So I'm not expecting Keshell up until after the deadline. And so if you have the IL spot and you want to stash him, sure, go for it. He's a talented player. But I think you're waiting at least 2 weeks.
And I think that's fair too, because the Twins roster as it's currently constructed, I'm not sure where Keshell would play. I know that they would try to shoehorn him in, but unless he can play, I mean, I guess they are rotating second base pretty heavily, but when Keshell was up the first time, they didn't seem like they wanted him to play second base that much. They were playing Edouard Julien over him at second base, and Julien is not known for his defense at all. So he was like, Keshell was like the rare speed demon designated hitter leadoff. Like that's something you don't really see very often. So I do wonder how they wind up shoehorning him back in defensively, because that was kind of always the big detractor from Keshell.
Yeah, and they've kind of stopped playing Ty France regularly at first base. So it's like Cody Clemens is their first baseman, but he's also playing some second. So like, could they put Keshell? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
I would. He's been bad hitter of late, like, but they still want to get him plate appearances. Like I know, and like Larnack he plays a lot, but he should DH rather than play the corner outfield. Like it's They were playing Trevor Larnack in the field instead of Luke Keshell last time Keshell was up to give a sense, and Edward Julien, just give a sense of what they think of his defensive ability.
Yeah. And this kind of connects to it. DJ Storm Florida says that he has Tyro Estrada on the IL and he picked up Otto Lopez, which is awesome for you. I mean, just a really nice swap there. Will Estrada will be back sooner than later. Do I keep him or drop him for Luke Keshell? Estrada, I think, comes back to play second base regularly because right now they're just playing Kyle Farmer there. And for everything you want to say about Estrada, like he was hitting 284 in his 29 games, 18 RBIs, 11 runs in 29 games. You know, we kind of said coming into the year that like Estrada was a 270 hitter who just played through injuries last year and had a down year. And a 270 hitter going to Coors is probably a 280 hitter. And I think Keshell's best attribute right now as a rookie is probably his batting average. And so I think I'd rather keep Estrada over Keshell for this season.
Who plays the next game, Estrada or Keshell?
I think Estrada is already on a rehab assignment.
I thought he just went on the IL. Oh no, he didn't just go on the IL. But yeah, I think I don't know.
It's retro. Sprain left thumb, retroactive to the 11th.
Yeah.
They're hoping that he starts a rehab assignment soon. Hoping.
Yeah,
so
week.
I guess, maybe Keshell comes up first.
That's what I'm saying. I think that Keshell might get the first plate appearance of the two. So in that case, it's difficult for me to recommend Estrada. But I know Estrada against I'm still, unless there's some clearing up, I don't know. I don't think Keshell comes back as an everyday guy. I think Keshell mixes in. He could re-earn an everyday spot. But if you can't play defense, where do you play? Like that's kind of where the problem is right now with Keshell.
Right. Better start tonight, Brandon Woodruff at Seattle or Noah Cameron at the Cubs?
Woodruff.
And I think Woodruff better rest of season too.
I think so too, but not by that much. I think they're both good.
No, not by that much.
Yeah. I like them both.
Obviously, that depends on Cole Reagans and what the Royals are
everything else
hopes are like. You know, that same Jeff Passan article today, he had Seth Lugo with a 70% chance to be traded, which makes some sense if the Royals aren't going to contend and Lugo is a free agent at the end of the year. It does make sense for them to trade Lugo because the Royals are probably not going to pony up for him.
No. Does he have one more year with an option though?
I don't believe so. The article said that
2026 player option.
Player option, which he'll decline.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Basebone says Edward Cabrera or Ryan Nelson in a 5x5. If I knew Edward Cabrera was actually healthy, it would be an easy Edward Cabrera pick for me. I know he was cleared to throw this week, but given his injury histories, the fact that he left his last start with a trainer and a shoulder injury is like, I don't love it.
Yeah.
But I think I'd rather have Edward Cabrera on my roster and keep him on the bench and hope that he is healthy, because I think Ryan Nelson is good, but he's like a 70% four-seam fastball guy with no real secondary pitch. And so I think that's just going to really limit his upside to be solid ratios, but like no Ks.
Cabrera is another player that was named in that passing piece as trade deadline option.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not healthy, but you were one of the first people to really be on Edward Cabrera this year with that arm slot change, the sinkers. Like that was the moment where it was like, oh, okay, finally we did it. Nice, we're here.
Yeah, I think that's my thought is the sinker and the new arm slot has really helped the command. And so, I'm certainly hopeful. This is in your wheelhouse. Dad says Nolan McLean's most recent start of the 18th was rough. Only going 3 2/3, 5 earned runs, 4 hits, 3 walks, 1 hit by pitch. Does this prolong a late season call up? Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Brandon Sprout is cruising right now.
Yeah. Sprout. So these two have kind of been jockeying back and forth atop the Mets minor league pitching ranks all season. Sprout was always much more highly acclaimed. He had the better college stats. He had the pedigree. He was, I think, a higher draft pick, but only slightly. The Mets also drafted Sprout at least twice, if not 3 total times during his baseball career. So they've always wanted him. But he couldn't get lefties out. McLean isn't as good with the lefties either, but he was able to add more pitches more quickly than Sprout was. So he was able to mess around with the lefties with a cutter, and then he had the sinker with the four-seam fastball, kept forcing fastball to lefties. And he was cruising his whole season. But I think Sprout has always been ahead of him for a call-up because this is the first time in Nolan McLean's life that he's ever fully pitched in a year. He was a two-way player up until May of last season. So this is the first time calendar year as a pitcher. So I think the Mets are very reluctant to call him up to the major leagues in the middle of a pennant race during his first year as a pitcher. I think Sprout, if any of them get a call, but the Mets have been reluctant to give either of them a call in general. The Mets have been throwing Justin Hageman and Brandon Waddell as bulk relievers every single week with these two guys flashing at least plus stuff in the upper minors. Not as exactly plus results, but I would think.
I wonder if that. Do you think that's because they probably expect to add an arm and it's like they probably don't want to call these guys up for 1 or 2 starts and send them back down, and like you just don't want to.
We've been saying we don't want to call them up for 1 or 2 starts since the middle of June. We could have had seven weeks of these guys, and I know that. Yeah, that's true. I love the idea of like maybe not start them traditionally, but the Mets right now, 60% of their rotation can't throw 100 pitches. So to have Sprout follow Sean Manaea rather than Brandon Waddell follow Sean Manaea, to me, I like that more. And also, we see teams bring pitchers in like this all the time, especially this time of year. Like the Dodgers do this. The Brewers back in the day, it's how Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, and Freddie Peralta all started their major league careers, winning teams in the second half in 2 to 4 inning increments. It seems like they don't want to start those clocks. Maybe they're more available in trade discussions than we've ever realized, just because if you add them to the 40-man roster, that changes the nexus of a trade for another team acquiring them. If you start that service time clock, so. That to me is part of it. But the fact that the Mets went through this last 2 months and they neither got a look, it makes me less confident that we see them at some point this year than if you would have asked me on May 15th.
I would agree with that. If you need a shortstop, Blaze Alexander, I'd be very cautious about that. Blaze Alexander started the last 4 games at second base because Ketel Marte did not start any of those games at second base. One was before the All-Star break, and then he was on the restricted list after his home was burglarized. So Blaze Alexander probably going back to the bench here because I don't think he's pushing out Ketel Marte or Geraldo Perdomo. But a name to keep in mind if playing time opens up. Gerald says thoughts on Blake Snell. Sure. I think he probably needs one more rehab start. And then it's Blake Snell, and he pitched for the Dodgers. You're going to throw him regardless. If you wanted to be super cautious, you might sit him the first start off the IL because that tends to be a practice that we like, but it depends who he's lined up to face. And I don't think you need to overcomplicate it too much. So yeah, Blake Snell.
Mm-hmm.
Last one for us today. Thank you guys for having all the questions. Even in a down week, it's nice to always have these questions and have these conversations. But Ben Guy wants to know better first base keeper for next season: Michael Busch, Bryce Harper, or Spencer Torkelson. For me, I don't even include Torkelson in this conversation between those two.
Imagine going
and I would lean Harper.
Imagine going a time machine, seeing this question on March 15th.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, what happened this year? I'm definitely still going with Harper. I think Harper's about to go supernova hot. It's that time of year. He's swinging the bat better. The bat speed's trended up. The exit velocity is trending back up. He had that big 2-homer game. Friday, a 2-homer game? Was it the 1-homer game? No, he's 2 homers on Friday. Yeah, it's Harper.
That side slow-mo shot of the homer that he hit that was like neck high, where he starts his load and then in the middle of his hips going forward adjusts up to get on top of it is just like, I don't think people fully understand how hard it is to hit a baseball sometimes, and that was like, dear Lord, how did he do that? It was so impressive. I really like Michael Busch though. I love that he's been leading off too. I'm fully in on Michael Busch. I just, not over Harper in a keeper league for me.
No, definitely not yet.
That's going to do it. Let us know what content you got coming out this week, James.
Tomorrow, got the regular scheduled waiver wire. Didn't do last week during All-Star week, but 3 waiver wire pickups. I got you to go with. There's some pitchers I have on my list. There's some hitters, but I have not whittled down at all yet. And then back to the weekly saves column this week after missing last week.
Nice. Hopefully tomorrow I have an article coming out on what is the concept of feel. I talked to a lot of pitchers and pitching coaches about like, what is feel? How do pitchers know if they have feel? Can you teach it? Stuff like that I think just like helps us understand pitching a little bit more. Wednesday, I have my pitch mix article coming out. I skipped that last week with the All-Star break. And then Sunday, I will have my waiver wire column. And then at some point, either later this week or probably next week, I do have an article on players I think will gain or lose value at the trade deadline. And so just something to keep in mind for that. Keep the content locked here. Keep open the Rotoworld player news page, especially today when you got lineups to set, bookmark it, keep it open. We will help you with all of those decisions. And James and I will continue to be here, through the dog days of August on Mondays to chat with you on the Q&A. So for James Schiano, I am Eric Samulski, and we'll check you next Monday on the Rotoworld Player News Fantasy Baseball Q&A.